Worship leader today, and I look forward to an exciting, certainly enlightening session with Reverend Pisosky here. I want to extend a very warm welcome to everyone who's visiting us for the first time. Rather than gathering because we all have the same beliefs, we are an intentional community gathered around our shared promise to support each other's individual spiritual journeys. We're also intentional about bringing all ages together. In today's world, that often does not happen, or it actually does not happen very often. But we think it's important to have an adult friend ask a child or youth, "How was that science test you were so worried about?" And for a 30-year-old and a 70-year-old to chat about life while having coffee after the service. If you're here in person, I hope you'll stay and chat after the service and tell us a little bit about yourselves. And if you're joining us online, please fill out a visitor form using the link in the description. We'd love to connect with you. We have some introductions.
You can all say hello to Kairos and Andy as they leave. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. It's so good to be here. My name is Kristen, and I am, for those that I haven't met, I am one of your community ministers, one of your affiliated community. Thank you for the clapping. Okay, thank you, receive. It's good to be with you. What if church What if every single Sunday morning can be an invitation to return to ourselves, to return to our centers, our hearts, and maybe even our spirits? And in returning to ourselves, the possibility of returning to each other. In the words of Derek Walcott, love after love, he writes, the time will come when with elation you will greet yourself, arriving at your own door, in your own mirror, and each with a smile at the other's welcome. And say, sit here, eat. You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you've maybe ignored, for another who knows, this person who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit. Feast on your life. We rise in body or spirit to begin this morning by singing a song familiar to many of you, and yet we return to the original words written by Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach. Instead of home, he actually used the word land. I invite you to join us in singing. Beautiful, thank you. If I stand here, can you still hear me amplified with the mic? Okay, great. My offering to you all this morning Great. Okay. My offering to you all this morning is a good death. And so today we're going to be leaning in together on this question, what if it's possible to have a good death? Will you take a breath with me with just that, right? So I invite you throughout to sink into your breath whenever you feel like you need to. It's a big topic, and yet one of the gifts of church, maybe one of the invitations of church, is this is the very stuff that we get to come together and talk about, right? And so I center us with a wisdom story. And the wisdom story actually comes from a physician, Dr. F. Amos Bailey, who practices at the University of Colorado Anschutz Medical Campus in the palliative care department. And so this is somebody who for decades, right, has been tending the bedside. And I center us in this story because I think it can speak to many of our experiences. He starts with this. Mr. K had been sick for a long time. Although he had dementia and thought Nixon was president, he did remember that he had multiple myeloma for 14 years. That is a long time. That is a long time for a disease with a life expectancy of 3 to 4 years. We had tried to call his surrogate decision maker his sister, but there was no answer at her home. Over the next few days, we reached Mr. K's nephew, who told us that his mother, Mr. K's sister, had died just that week. He knew that Mr. K was sick and agreed to do a do not resuscitate order, but asked us to try to turn things around since there had been just too much death in the family that week. Today, I called to let the nephew know that his uncle was much worse, and we needed to transfer him to a palliative care unit. We could get no answer on the phone. Later that morning, we got word that he had had a flat tire on the way to the hospital and had to turn back, but he would be on his way soon. Mr. K did not wait, but died in the early afternoon. When the nephew finally arrived, the nurses stopped him at the station and brought him to my office. I broke the news that his uncle had died about an hour earlier. He seemed stunned with just too much death, but said he knew that his uncle had been sick a long time, 14 years. I asked him if he wanted to come into the room to see his uncle's body, but he seemed unsure as I walked him to the door. Usually, it is the women folk that come to the bedside, that shed tears, kiss foreheads, and stroke hands gently. The nephew spoke warmly to his uncle and firmly in a friendly way, punched his upper arm, and while vigorously rubbing his forearm, you can picture it, right? He kept his own arm between him and his uncle as he reached over in a clumsy embrace. This seemed to be the way men often greet each other, he writes. He told him that now he was in heaven with his sister, parents, and family members. Quickly now, he was ready to leave. It was time to go and talk with family and make the arrangements for the body. I wondered briefly what he would choose. Lately, I had been reading Wendell Berry, this is still Dr. Amos talking, who has been writing about rural Kentucky for more than 70 years. In the past, he had been called a Luddite, but now seems so prescient, if not prophetic, in his skepticism of the superiority of the new ways. And Amos Bailey includes this poem from Wendell Berry called Testament. So treat me even dead, as a man who has a place to go, something to do. Don't muck my face with wax and powder and rouge as one would prettify an unalterable fact to give bitterness the lie. Admit the native earth. My body is and will be. Admit the freedom and its changeability. Dress me in clothes I wore in the days round. Lay me in a wooden box. Put the box in the ground. Beneath this stone, a berry is planted in his homeland as he wanted. Amos Bailey continues. I have long said that I did not want to be embalmed or put on display. Cremation seemed a better way. Cremation, though, is not the way of my people. It would be more consistent with my heritage to be buried without toxic chemicals, wrapped in a cloth or simple box deep in the ground where I would join the generations that came before. I wonder if they even allow this now, to be buried simply in the ground, he wonders. I haven't told my family of these thoughts, he confesses. I suppose I should. But I would not want to make things hard, to ask for special care of the dead body when I have struggled so long to change the way we care for the living. Will you take another breath with me? I share this story to center us in the wisdom of the human experience. Sometimes we get a flat tire on the way to the hospital. Sometimes it's really difficult to tell our loved ones or our family members that what we actually want is to be buried in the ground without a box. It's all okay. It's all enough. You are enough as we move deeper into this conversation, wherever you are in it, whatever steps you can take towards this conversation and having it with your loved ones, it's all enough.
And now, I'd like to light our chalice. The chalice is a symbol of our liberal faith. It is the warmth of compassion and the fire of justice, and a lamp on the spiritual path. If you're joining us online and have a chalice nearby, please get ready to light it with us. And now we'll do our covenant. To covenant is to commit that even if we fall short of our aspirations, we will not let go of them. We will never cease from trying again to live them out. In that spirit, gathered in person and online, will you all rise and speak as you can our covenant aloud? We gather in fellowship to speak truth to each other, to reach out and touch one another, to care with each other, and to seek the truth divine. So be it.
Okay, that better. Kept wanting to move the microphone. I invite you all to join me in a time of centering, a time of breath, a time of meditation, maybe even prayer. If it feels good to you, it always helps me to just let my eyes close, and you're welcome to do that or find a soft gaze on the floor in front of you, just for a few moments. Turning down some of the inputs from without in order to connect more deeply with the within. And I invite you to take a deep breath. and then another. Allowing your heart and your mind and your spirit to catch up with your body in this moment. I invite you now to gently draw your breath to the soles of your feet, bringing awareness, gentle awareness to this place where the earth comes up to meet you. And taking in a sense of support from the earth all around you. And staying with your breath, seeing if there's space to offer a welcome to yourself and all that you carry in this morning. Your joy and your sorrow, your grief and your hope, your celebration and your regret. Staying with the source of life, your breath, as you create a little bit more space for all of what you carry, all of what you feel, all that stirs in your heart and your mind, all of you. And if that feels far, that welcome to all of you, know that someone next to you is offering that to you. I am offering that to you. And then gently imagining on your next inhale, breathing in love from this infinite source. There's plenty for everyone. And breathing out love to someone else in this room who needs it. Breathing in love, really imagining taking it into every cell of your body. You get to have this love. And then exhaling, offering it to maybe someone who needs it outside of this room. Inhaling love and exhaling love. Caring for each other with our breath. And into this space, I offer this blessing by John O'Donohue. For Josie, he writes, my mother. On the day when the weight deadens on your shoulders and you stumble, may the clay dance to balance you. And when your eyes freeze behind the gray window and the ghost of loss gets into you, may a flock of colors, indigo, red, green, and azure blue, come to awaken in you a meadow of delight. When the canvas frays in the currach of thought and a stain of ocean blackens beneath you, may there come across the waters a path of yellow moonlight to bring you safely home. May the nourishment of the earth be yours. May the clarity of light be yours. May the fluency of the ocean be yours. May the protection of the ancestors be yours. And so may a slow wind work these words of love around you, an invisible cloak to mind your life. May it be so. One of the true gifts of community is being able to share in our joys and in our sorrows, this very substance of life. And each week you're invited to place a stone representing the weight of a sorrow or a struggle, or a stone representing the mark of a celebration or a joy. You're welcome to take a stone and place it in the earth in remembrance that something larger holds all of it. I want to name as we begin a celebration, one from Fred Cole, that a fundraising dinner on Friday for Boulder area sanctuary and imagination, did I get that right, wherever Fred is? Immigration, thank you. Thank you, Barbara. The fundraiser was very successful. Put a stone for celebration in that. And I also want to name a friend of mine who may have been a friend of yours, Andy Clark, died this week. And I want to honor his laughter and his music and his food and all the joy that he brought into so many people's lives, and also the sorrow, the real sorrow in his death. So I'm going to put 2 stones for the celebration and the joy. And as you're feeling ready, you're welcome to come forward and share yours with us. Of our hopes and our griefs, we hold this compassionate space with love. And I placed a stone in the earth for all those joys and sorrows that rest silently on your heart. Know that those too are held in community. Amen. Thank you to the choir. When I served as a hospital chaplain a few years ago, I used to have to talk to every single patient about death. Not because every patient was dying, although we all are, right? The leading cause of death is birth, after all. Not mine, can't claim it, but it's good. I used to have to talk to every patient about death because at the spiritual care department, St. Anthony's North Health Campus in Westminster, where I did my residency, we were responsible for talking to every single person admitted about their advance directives. It was our job. About those documents, right? I see some nods. About those documents that designate someone to make your healthcare decisions for you if you can't make them yourself. And what those decisions are, right? Colorado is actually not a next of kin state, meaning technically, officially, we have to communicate to the hospital or care provider who we want to make our healthcare decisions if we can't make them ourselves. In Colorado, it doesn't technically automatically fall to your spouse or your child. There's no default. And so we have to talk about it. Every morning as a hospital chaplain, I would head to the medical surgical unit or the ER or the ICU or the rehab center with a list a list of people with whom I had to have the conversation about death and dying. Not necessarily because it was even imminent for them, but because it was inevitable, ultimately. And rarely ever on our preferred timeline, right? Death seems to come when death comes. And let me tell you, I did not learn how to talk about any of this growing up. My grandmother, Genevieve Daly, may she rest in peace and power. People used to call her Honey. When Honey used to talk about this, she would say, "If I die, if I die." Exiled to somewhere out of sight, I would imagine that many of us, maybe most of us, were never taught how to talk about death or what to do when someone is dying. This huge thing that each and every one of us will encounter in some ways has been left out, muted. We have whole medical professions dedicated to birth, the birthing process. But what about death? What about the dying process? Where do we learn how to die and to die well, or at least try to? Sometimes when I brought up advanced directives with patients at the hospital, they thought that I was somehow ushering in death just by speaking about it. At least that's how it felt. Can any of you resonate with that feeling? As if somehow, as long as we don't talk about it directly, it won't happen. And I struggled. I struggled at first to kind of pierce that wall and bring up the conversation with patients. But then something shifted. Something shifted for me when I realized that for the people who had actually just received a terminal diagnosis, or who were in an unfolding story of serious illness, or were maybe dying, for many of them, it was a relief. Finally, someone is talking about what's here, right? And somehow talking about it helped to make a good death a little bit more possible. What if there is such a thing as a good death? As I say those words, I invite you again, as we've been doing all morning, to maybe take a breath and notice what you feel in response. Maybe it's an emotion, a thought, maybe a sensation in the body. It's all welcome here, and it's all important to notice. A good death. What if there is such a thing as a good death? What would that begin to look like for you? Which might be different from the person sitting next to you, maybe who you've known for decades. Maybe it's one free of pain. Maybe you're surrounded by those who you love and who love you. Maybe you're in a beautiful place, your home, or even outside in nature somehow. And maybe it's something else entirely. There's a movement right now in what is sometimes called death care or death work, of helping to expand the common knowledge of what's possible during dying and death. For example, I only learned within the past couple of years that in every state, it's actually legal to have a home funeral. Have you all ever heard about this, a home funeral? To create a space for your beloved who has just died to safely be at home for often up to 3 days. There are guidelines. You have to keep the body at a certain temperature, which actually can very easily be done. But the rest is up to you and your community. Do you want to sit in quiet vigil with candles while friends slowly drift in and out? Some bringing a beautiful flower from a memory, others a story, and others silence of their own? Or is it a 2-day party full of loved ones coming in and out, comfortable in your home, brimming with laughter and full of your beloved's favorite music and food? Or maybe it's something else entirely. The National Home Funeral Alliance is rich with resources, in case you're curious. And there's now a growing field of what's called death doulas. People trained and called to the work of the emotional, physical, and informational support during the dying journey. A role which is very new and yet very old, too. Every known culture has some form of ritual for the dead. You see, our dominant cultural practices around death are actually quite new. In this country, we only began injecting bodies with a preserving chemical, with formaldehyde, during the Civil War, as a way to preserve bodies that needed to be transported great distances and often in hot weather in order to return home, which was a distinctly new thing in the 1860s. Before that, most people were dying where they lived, in their homes. In many cultures across time, including pre-Civil War America, loved ones died at home, their bodies washed and dressed, their hair combed by those that loved them, who were given space to lament amongst it all, right? Others in the community would be building the coffin or sewing the shroud, while others dug the grave, made a meal, or sat with the body for 2 or even 3 days. These are our practices, ultimately, in all of our lineages. I find myself drawn to the re-emerging home funeral practice because something about it feels like a returning to something old and wise, almost like a remembering, a returning to slowing down and really spending time with the body of your beloved, more fully processing the new reality of it all. To then perhaps even maybe return the body to the earth to naturally decompose, a gift back to this web of life of which we are a part. And I don't mean a return to a practice exactly that once was, but more a return to the spirit or the essence of something that will find its new iteration amongst us today. But this home funeral thing might not be for you. I get it. Nor natural burial. I think part of what makes a good death is choice, right? Is being able to make choices about the dying and death process, or at least try to. Because again, death is not often on our preferred timeline. My experience as a hospital chaplain taught me that if we don't talk about death, or how we want to die, or how we don't want to die, what we want to have done with our bodies, if we want a service of some kind, if we don't try our best, right? If we don't just try stumbling to have this conversation with each other, then when death comes, there's a lot more suffering for everyone involved. The thing that often turned the conversation with patients is when I name that it is a gift. It is truly a gift to those that you love and who will still be alive after you die, to imagine what a good death might be for you and to tell them. It's very hard. It's very hard to honor someone's wishes if you didn't know what they were. In a 2016 review of literature titled Defining a Good Death, these researchers discovered 3 top themes that defined a good death. The first one being a preference for a specific way of dying. Second was pain-free. And third was emotional well-being. Religiosity and spirituality was also a top priority, interestingly, specifically from the patient perspective, more so than the family or loved one's perspective. And I know that this isn't always possible. Death can come suddenly and without warning, unjustly, painfully, and sometimes within the grip of trauma. A good death isn't always possible. But sometimes it is. Sometimes it is. And so what does a good death look like for you? Inspired by these questions from the new death education curriculum called Date with Death Club, created by UU minister, actually, Reverend Karen Johnston. If you're up for it this morning, I want to invite you to imagine here together, with a couple questions I'm about to ask, what a good death might look like for you. You don't have to force anything or work hard here. It's just about noticing what shows up in response to the questions. So once again, let's start by taking a breath together. You might even let your eyes close if you'd like, remembering that in our breath, that we are alive. What does a good death look like and feel like for you? What is the room like where you are? What is the quality of light? Is there natural light? Is it dark? Are there lamps overhead? What about the temperature? Is it warm, or is there fresh air, a breeze? Is there a sense of connection to what is outside the space? Are you actually outside? Are there smells that you are appreciating? Is there music? Is there music playing? Is it silence? Are there people there? Are they touching your hands or sitting at a distance? Are there people you don't want to be there? Are people talking with you? Are they talking with each other? Is there crying? Is there laughter? Taking all of this in with one more breath, as if to say yes. Yes to what showed up for you in this brief little practice. And now finally, imagining someone staying in this place for another moment, imagining someone you can share this with. Share what just showed up for you. Maybe it's your partner or your child, yes. But maybe it's someone with a little bit more distance, a friend, someone else here in this community. And if you can't think of anyone, you're welcome to tell me. I'd love to hear it. I think one of the reasons why it can be hard to talk about death generally is because it often forces us to confront our own mortality. The truth that our life too is impermanent and temporary and maybe even fleeting, which can make the heart race to even think about. At least that's what I notice for me. But we have this ancient technology called the breath that allows us to stay in that heart flutter or whatever it might be for you as we talk about it. Maybe it's not a heart flutter. Maybe it's just a wall of resistance or tightness, right? Staying with it for another breath to notice what happens next. Because when we stay with it, whatever comes up for us, when we have these conversations, just for a breath and maybe another one, often what can happen is we open up to actually a deeper awareness of being alive, right? The heart flutter for me, anticipating the loss of something so extraordinary. Life. And the preciousness that is here right now, being alive together. Staying in the discomfort of talking about death actually brings us closer to life. What a beautiful thing. Closer to the preciousness of these bodies that get to sing and share and move in some way. Closer, connected more intimately to the luster, maybe even the sacredness of this precious life. May it be so. Amen.
Please rise in body and spirit and join us in singing hymn tune Prospect with the words by Carl Stroman, To the Sky.
To the sky from the earth in lofty flight, from the hills so green in the blush of spring, so away with thee shall I fly from this place to a land so far away. Softly now with the dawn I will ride with the wind o'er the hills through the mist on the wings of thee. Spirit fly to the cloud up above. Spirit fly to a place beyond the sky. Spirit fly to a place on high. Spirit fly to a place on high.
That's impressive. This month, our offering goes to the Boulder Food Rescue. Boulder Food Rescue facilitates the redistribution of produce that would otherwise be wasted from grocery stores to communities living with low income. They take food directly to no-cost grocery programs, community-led distribution points that happen at affordable housing sites or preschools, bypassing barriers to accessing food. BFR is a team of 9 staff members and over 150 active volunteers who redistribute, get this, 1,400 pounds of healthy food daily and serve over 7,000 people each year. Those are pretty impressive numbers. If food waste were a country, it would be the 3rd largest contributor to greenhouse gases. Figure that, behind the US and China. In the US alone, we waste enough food to fill the Rose Bowl Stadium every day. BFR's food distribution program has a major impact on reducing greenhouse gas emissions by diverting food from the landfill and offsetting new consumption of food. Bicycle shifts reduce emissions from having fewer cars on the road and create a culture of bicycle awareness. We reduce emissions by having reduced grocery travel for participants who receive food directly in their affordable housing sites. It is estimated that BFR's food distribution program reduces about 800,000 pounds of CO2 annually, which is the equivalent of 87 passenger cars off the road. Besides having just a direct environmental impact, we believe that people who are affected by the climate crisis should be in the center of the conversations and decisions about reducing climate impacts. The trust and relationships BFR has built with the community is the foundation and fertile ground in which climate change initiatives will occur. In the coming years, our plan is to bring out a more holistic, root cause, and people-oriented approach to climate change and food systems by increasing our community conversations and providing educational opportunities. I invite you to give as generously as you are able. And for those online, you can use the QR code or find a link in the video description. For those gathered in person, I always have to check, see if it's there, you can scan the QR code to make a donation as the ushers now pass the baskets. May our gifts be used to enact justice, bringing peace and love to the Boulder community. Thank you.
We so gratefully receive this offering. May it strengthen this community. and support our devotion to loving service. Our closing words this morning come from Raymond Carver. He says, "And did you get what you wanted from this life, even so? I did. And what did you want? To call myself beloved, to feel myself beloved on the earth." Amen. May it be so. Will you join me in rise in body or spirit as we sing our closing song?
Wander as you may. Blessed is the